hi again. Look who it is, it's Bubba's. Big baby. Okay, bye. Hello friends, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be discussing my favorite books of all time. For the most part, I read a lot of fantasy, a lot of romance, fantasy romance as well. A lot of the times these are the books I recommend to people, especially when they're first starting to get into reading. I feel a lot of these times these books are great entries into certain genres, so let's go ahead and get started. First up, I have my favorite book of all time. That's going to be the game we're going to play today, is how many times I say this is my favorite book of all time. First up, I have Daisy Jones and the Six. I don't actually have a physical copy right now. I gave it to my mom, so Mom, when you come see me next week, can I please have it back? Thanks. Daisy Jones and the Six is about a rock band in the late 60s, early 70s. Discusses their rise to fame, and suddenly they broke up in the early 70s and they never talked about it, so they eventually sit down for an interview and they finally discuss what happened and what went wrong and why they broke up, what happened afterwards, so on and so forth. It is a very uniquely written book. It's written in an interview, so I always recommend it as well as an audiobook because each character has their own voice actor. It switches back and forth and it's just so incredible, and it's really cool just to experience for the first time. That's how I read it. I love Taylor Jenkins Reid and her writing so much, so I always also recommend her books. Especially, I always recommend Daisy Jones and the Six. The next book I talked about in a recent video was The Boys of Tommen. First one is Finding 13. It is by Chloe Walsh. This book is about a rugby player and a girl who switched schools. She transferred schools because she was bullied very badly at her last school. She has a very rough home life. It is fantastic. I've only read the first and second book in the series, but I absolutely love them so much, and I love the characters, the cast of characters in this book. I'd want to be friends with all of them. I think they're hysterical and so funny and so great, and it's very found family-esque, so if you're interested in that, I recommend it just simply for the found family element. The next book I have is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. I've only read the first 3 books in this series. It's comprised of like 3 trilogies right now, I believe, so I've only read the first one. In this book, the Lord Ruler is the bad guy, and basically it poses the question of what had happened if the bad guy had won and has ruled for thousands of years. I think this book is really interesting, especially their magic system, because it is based off of elements, so different elements give you different powers. And I love the characters. I especially love the second and third book just because of the politics behind it. This book is more of a heist, but I love when fantasy books get into political systems and why things should be certain ways. I always just find it very interesting, so that's why it's one of my faves. Up next, I have Six of Crows by Leigh Bardugo. This book is about it's about a heist. Are we surprised? I love a good heist fantasy story. It is based in the Grishaverse. You don't need to read the first trilogy to understand Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom. You're fine on your own. Again, this cast of characters is absolutely just phenomenal. I love Leigh Bardugo and I love her writing, and I just cannot recommend this book enough. It is a YA fantasy novel as well, so it is great for if you're interested in getting into fantasy, just because I think her characters are so well written. The themes she handles are excellent, and overall it's just a great book. The next book I have is it's going to be a series, because I love series. It is the Addicted and Calloway series universe. So this is the first book in the Calloway sisters, but the Addicted series is where you start off with. So overall it is about 3 sisters, Lily, Rose, and Daisy, and the first series is the Addicted series, which is based off of Lily and Lauren. Lily is a sex addict, Lauren is an alcoholic, and they're fake dating to fool their families and trick their friends and thinking that they live perfectly normal lives when in fact they have a lot of trauma to deal with and they undergo a lot together. The second series starts off with Kiss the Sky, and it is about Rose and Connor Cobalt. They're my favorite couple in the entire series, although the spin-off series Like Us, which is about all of their kids, Luna Hale probably has taken first place. We'll see. The next book comes out very soon. These characters and their relationships with one another are fantastic. I love Rose and Connor Cobalt. I think they are probably my favorite characters possibly ever. It is, to me, their romance is probably one of the best romances I've ever read in my life. which is saying a lot because I read a lot of romance books. They're absolutely chef's kiss. Eventually they end up on a reality TV show and so much happens and there's drama. Other people are trying to like sabotage relationships and it's just fantastic and it's such a fun read too. The next book I have that is one of my absolute favorites. I haven't even finished the series yet, so I know that it's a good one. It is the Blood Grace series by Bella Roth. It is about Cassia, who is trying to overthrow her tyrant of a father, and Leo, who she teams up with. Leo is a vampire or a Hesperian, I think is how it's pronounced. And I love a good vampire romance. It is so slow burn, like more slow burn than Mariana Zapata. I said it. These characters are on like the third book and they're like barely together. I love that it has very classical fantasy elements to it. So to me, this book is everything that I wanted from Blood and Ash to be, but like a million times better. Leo is a bit more of a cinnamon roll. He's very academic. He is an ambassador from his country to Cassia's country. Cassia is a very strong female character. She loves to garden and be with plants, and I think it is so sweet. And I just love their relationship. I love them together, and I'm so excited to keep reading this series when I get a chance. So speaking of slow burn authors, we have Mariana Zapata. I love her books. I think I'm pretty sure I read every single one of her books. If I haven't, then I need to get on it. But my favorites from her are Colty, From Luke Cove with Love, Gracie and the Grump, The Wall of Winnipeg and Me, and All Roads Lead Here are all fantastic reads. So Wait For It is such a great read as well. I often kind of forget about that one in All Roads Lead Here just because those first four are just absolutely amazing. So all of her books are romance. They're very slow burn. They all have different elements. Like, for example, Gracie and the Grump is based off of superheroes. Colty is a soccer player and her coach. The Wall of Winnipeg and Me is a marriage of convenience because the football player in it is Canadian and he needs American citizenship. So he very begrudgingly marries his assistant. He recently had quit and she just does not like him because he's very standoffish. I just love her books. All of her heroes are just there's something about them. They're so grumpy a lot of the times and so standoffish. All of them, without fail, are grumpy and standoffish. I don't know how her female main characters do it, but I adore her books and her writing, and I think they're so fun and such a great read as well. The next book I have is Nevernight by Jay Kristoff. I did mention this in my last video as well, my mid-year freakout tag. And Nevernight is about Mia, who is training to be an assassin. Her father had been leading a rebellion, so her entire family was killed. She is out seeking revenge. This book is incredible. The writing style is very unique and very different from what I'm used to. So it was like this breath of fresh air for me for a fantasy series and a fantasy novel. Overall, this was such a great read. I think I gave this one 4 stars, and then I gave the second and third book 5 stars because I love them so much. The next book I have is the lovely Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. This is about Achilles and Patroclus, them growing up together, becoming friends, eventually falling in love, and then obviously the Trojan War breaks out. It is absolutely a devastatingly beautifully written book. I've never read in my entire life a book so beautiful. Hands down, this is the most gorgeous book I've ever read. Just her description and her imagery, it moves you. If you know anything about like the Iliad, the Trojan War, if you watch like the movie Troy, I think it is, with Brad Pitt, you kind of know what happened. So going into this, I knew what was going to happen, but it was still absolutely just soul-wrenching and devastating, and I sobbed. I purposely read this book when my husband wasn't home so I could cry without being made fun of, because I finished it and I sobbed for 30 minutes and I wiped my tears. I reread the last few pages because I couldn't believe that had happened, and I kept crying. This book is so beautiful, and I can't say that enough about this book and Madeline Miller's writing. That's why it's one of my faves, hands down. Up next, we have Jade City by Fonda Lee. Her books are so amazing. Oh my goodness. I did not want to finish Jade Legacy simply because I did not want the series to be over. I did not want to say goodbye to the characters. I didn't want anything bad to happen to them, and it is such a great read. Basically, the way this world is split up is there are two different clans, and they are at a war with one another to control the jade supply, because the jade gives them powers and makes them stronger. There's a war going on, there's different family dynamics. The three main characters in this book I absolutely love, and they are some of my favorite characters I've ever read before. It is such a journey to go on, and I'm so sad that I had finished it, but it was so worth reading. And eventually, whenever I get a chance to reread this is going to be a series that I pick up again eventually at some point. Love it. And next we have The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. The Poppy War, again, is absolutely beautifully devastating. I had about 50 pages into this book spoiled the entire series at the very end of the last book, and I still was a hot mess reading this. Basically, this book is about Ren. She is a girl trying to get into this academy. It's in like the elite academy, and there is a war breaking out and a revolution going on. There's so much happening in this book. It is based off of the Sino-Japanese War, so between China and Japan in like the 1930s, 40s. It is very dark. It is very grim. It handles very deep and dark subjects. So I recommend at least like looking up what this book is about. But overall, it is so fantastic. I love these characters. I love the way they fight, and they fight for their country and for their people and what they want. And they're just such fighters, and they fight till the very end, and I absolutely love it. Another thing that I really love about this book, I mentioned it earlier, I love it when my books have politics in it, especially my fantasy books. The way R.F. Kuang handles her politics, I think, are like I've never read before in a book. This is hands down one of the best political books I've read. And I think it's because a lot of the times in fantasy books it's like, oh, they overthrew the government and everything's fine, everything's magical, everything's going to work out and be great. But it's like, no, there's people who are starving, we need food, we need medicine, we need to reorganize troops and reorganize the government, and who's ruling and why are we doing this, and who's a traitor and who's not a traitor. And so because of that, Rebecca Kuang absolutely won over my heart with this book. Lastly, I have not a favorite book, but more so a favorite author, because I love absolutely everything she writes, much like Mariana Zapata. It is Sarah J. Maas. Here I have A Court of Thorns and Roses and Crescent City. A Court of Thorns and Roses is about a girl named Feyre who kills a wolf. She gets sent into the Fey realm, and she falls in love and yada yada. It is a Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then it takes a hard left and keeps running and going. Absolutely love this book, and I love the series, and this is the series that got me absolutely addicted to her writing. I think she has such a unique writing style. I'm not quite sure what it is about her books that just like pulls you in. It just like sucks you in like a vortex, and you just become addicted. Overall, it's such a great read. It's so fun, very stressful, but I love the characters in here too, and especially the characters that are introduced into the second book. So I always recommend Court of Thorns and Roses. The other favorite is Crescent City. So in this book, Grace Quinlan, her friends are basically slaughtered in a murder, and her and Hunt Athalar are trying to get to the bottom of what is happening. And so they team up together. They don't really get along. I'm not a huge murder mystery plot girly, but I do love this book, and I'm so excited for the third book to come out in January of 2024. For me, of all of the books Sarah J. Maas has written, these characters are my favorite characters. I love seeing them, especially in the second book. There's not a whole lot plot-wise going on in the second book, but just the characters and the way they interact with one another, I absolutely love. So thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you enjoyed. If you liked it, please feel free to like and subscribe and hang out and talk to me about more books. Goodbye!